In this video, I'm going to look at an app and uses Android and particularly Compose, and it has a set of checkboxes. And so with checkboxes, the user can have more than one selection. And so we see that here. I'm choosing times. What times today can you meet? I can meet at 11 and 12:30 and 2. And I'm giving the indices, if this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, there I have indices 2, 3, 4, and here are the times. So I'm working with the indices in case I had some parallel set of arrays or array of objects or something, and I wanted more than just strings. So I worked with the indices and then got the strings from them. And then if I have just before the display, I have a little sort. So even though I chose 9:30 sort of at the end, I threw it back to the beginning. But you can just, if you wanted the order of selection, then you can sort of eliminate that one little sort. Okay. So one thing I wanted was a function that created a checkbox list that was outside of onCreate, and that was sent the sort of state variables and methods that set those state variables. And I didn't want sort of global variables. That was what I set out to do. And then there's at least one part of this that is pretty kludgy that I admit sort of upfront. Okay. So, and that comes, we'll see again, but that comes from that I am, again, with a set of checkboxes, I can choose more than one. So I have a list, my state is a list, and Compose doesn't like to recompose simply on like a mutable list. So that's where to sort of force that recompose, that's where my kludgy thing comes in. And I'm sure there's a better answer and let the Compose experts have at it, but there's just an answer that gets the job done. Okay. So what do we have? Expand this. There we go. Okay. So I have my list of choices. So I'm going to have a set of choices, and then I'm going to have a set of the user's subset of those choices. But this is simply just all the possible choices. I'm setting up a set of things, a mutable list of integers, and these are going to be the indices. So this is this sort of showing down here, this 1, 2, 4, that is this selected time indices and a method to set them. And that's because I don't want to work in onCreate. I don't want all the code for making this in onCreate, and I didn't want global variables, so I have to send my method the variable that I want, the state variable I want to set, and a method for doing the setting. But I'm showing you this. Here is the Jetpack Compose thing, and they're saying right here, using mutable objects such as array list or mutable list of as a state in Compose causes your users to see incorrect or stale data in your app. Mutable objects that are not observable, such as array list or mutable data class, are not observable by Compose and don't trigger a recomposition when they change. So this is where I'm going to have a kludgy part. And here's the kludgy part. I am going to add another variable, just a silly little string that I call force. recompose and then its method to set it. And I'm going to have that. It's just going to be, I'm going to like add and subtract spaces to some string, but that being this simple thing will force the recompose. So, okay. So here is just my main thing, the surface. Here's a column, and here I am calling my function, which much more on that later. My checkbox list, I'm sending it a label. I'm sending it the options. I'm sending it the variable, the array, the mutable array of integers, the indices, and the function for setting them, and then my little string to force recomposing and its method. Okay. And then I have my text that just says selected indices, and then here I'm showing my force recompose and my selected indices. So this is what I really want, but this forces it to recompose, and same down here. So this is just showing me the indices joined to string, and then here I'm using map to get from the indices to my options with those indices as the index, and then I'm just using a join to string. So that's what's displaying these things down here. Okay, so the selected times are being updated, but are not forcing a recompose. So I had this extra little kluge thing to force the recompose. If you don't need the recompose, if you're going to say have them press a button, then you don't need this at all. Okay, then here's my list. And of course, I've made my life much more difficult by putting all of this stuff out of SetContent and saying I don't want any global variables. So I'm forcing, I had to sort of, under those conditions, I had to send these things within the method. So I'm sending selected indices, which was a mutable list of ints, and then the method to set them, and then the fake little string to force recomposing and its method. Okay, so I have a column. I have a text which is going to display the label. So there's the label times. And then I have my list of choices, which I'm going to loop over. I'm going to make a row, so I'm going to put things next to each other, and that is the checkbox and the text of the label. So here's a row, the checkbox and the time. So somewhere so here is, I think this is the place I got for my, where I stole a lot of the stuff about checkboxes. So I told you about this and the about the state, and this reference was just for the sort of list of checkboxes, but they had it sort of in SetContent, so their life was a little bit easier. And my one other reference here was this YouTube, where I sort of learned about this. Not to make this a mutable list, state list or list state, but to make it a mutable state of mutable list of int. And that's sort of what finally worked in terms of variable types and passing to my function. So, and that was in this YouTube video. So those are my main references here. Okay, so the checkbox. So I'm looping over, I sent a list of choices. I'm looping over those list of choices, and I'm working with an index. I think they had a for each. I have a for each indexed because I wanted because I'm passing back and forth the indices. So I wanted this to be this as I'm looping over to be in the index. So I have the choice index and the choice text. And I'm making a row to put the checkbox next to the text. And I am remembering, I'm making a variable to remember if the checkbox is checked, and I am going to my selected indices that I sent and asking if the choice index is contained in that list, then is checked would be true, otherwise it would be false. And then I'm saying the is checked value is the check state. So this is just a variable, but this is the checkbox checked or not. And then here is what happens when we check the box. And so it is the Boolean, the state of checking. So when you change the check state, you get an argument that comes in about true or false. Did you just check it or did you just uncheck it? So we're setting the is checked value to that Boolean. And then if it, again, which is a Boolean, if I just checked the checkbox, then I want to add the choice index to my selected indices. I've got a little log cat going here because I was confused and needed to see what was happening. And then I am using my set selected indices to the selected indices. So I'm changing the selected indices, and then I'm invoking this function. And then I am taking my this force recompose string, which is just either nothing, either a blank or a quote or some amount of quotes. And if I'm checking things, I add a space. It has to change, or I won't think they call it lazy, like recomposing is lazy. There has to be a change or it won't recompose. So I'm adding, so if I add something to my list, I add a space to my force recompose string. And then the else is if I'm unchecking the box, then I am removing choice index. And here originally I was sorting in the method, but then I said somebody might not want it sorted, so I ended up sorting in what I got when I get it back from the function. So the else is if it was not selected, I am removing the index. I had some log here, and then set the indices and set the recompose. The checkbox is enabled, so we can check it. This was just pretty much stolen from my example. So they had different colors for the checkboxes. And then here's the text of the checkbox, which was the choice text. So I was looping over my choices. Choice index was the index, and choice text was the actual element of the array. And so I said it was the text, the text of the choice, or choice text. And then I added a little modifier because the checkbox and the text were not very aligned in my mind. So I kind of pushed the text down to get it from the top. Got it to be a little bit better aligned, at least in my mind. Okay, so that's my method. And there we have it. There is me using that method, sending it a label, the options to be displayed, a variable to keep track of the indices, a method to set it, something to force, just a silly string, a kluge thing to force recomposing, and a method to set that variable. And here was that sorted that I mentioned. I didn't point that out the first time around. So if I didn't want them sorted, then I could get rid of that. So the list in general is not sorted, but before I display it, I am sorting it in both just the indices, and here the elements of my choices that have those indices. Okay, that's what I wanted to show you, sort of kludgy way to have a set of checkboxes to have them handled by a function that is outside of SetContent, and to not have a global variable. So that forced me to send this stuff as part of the function. And then I had the problem of the way I was working with the mutable list for the set of choices. Does not force a recompose. So I had this kludgy way of forcing a recompose. Probably a better way. If I discover it, I'll post a new video. Thanks for your attention.